10 Genius Habits That Make You Unbeatable. Audiobook. Reading by Coleman Hudson. Published by A1 Audiobook. Introduction. The Unbeatable Proposition. Let me tell you about a man named Arthur. On paper, Arthur is the definition of success. He's a sharp, respected architect at a competitive firm, lives in a nice apartment downtown, and has a close circle of friends. He runs half marathons. He can recommend a good bottle of wine. By all external measures, he is winning at the game of life. But Arthur lives with a quiet, persistent dread. Last Tuesday, he presented a new design concept to a major client and his boss. He'd worked on it for weeks, pouring his heart into every line and calculation. After the presentation, his boss pulled him aside and said, with a thin smile, "Good effort, Arthur, just not quite what I was expecting." That was it. 5 words. But for Arthur, those 5 words were a wrecking ball. The confidence he'd felt just minutes earlier evaporated. His stomach tightened into a knot. For the rest of the day, he couldn't focus. He replayed the meeting in his mind, dissecting his own presentation, finding flaws, and hearing his boss's words on a loop. He went home feeling like a fraud. The next day, a small but unexpected setback hit the project. A key vendor backed out. It was a manageable problem, a logistical hiccup. But for Arthur, it felt like confirmation of his failure. The feeling of being overwhelmed washed over him, a cold tide pulling him under. He felt beaten. Does Arthur's story sound familiar? Perhaps it's not a boss's comment for you. Maybe it's a dismissive remark from a family member, a post on social media that makes you feel inadequate, a project that fails to launch, or simply the daily, low-grade anxiety of feeling like you're always one misstep away from everything falling apart. You have the ambition. You have the talent. You put in the work. So why does it feel like your inner peace is so fragile? Why can a single external event, sometimes a trivial one, have the power to derail your entire day, your confidence, and your sense of self-worth? This is the state of the drifting self. It's the feeling of being a ship without a rudder, pushed and pulled by the unpredictable currents of other people's opinions, external circumstances, and your own reactive emotions. You spend your life bracing for the next invisible blow, and when it lands, you feel defeated. This is the problem this book was written to solve.
For too long, we've been taught to build our sense of self on unstable ground. We are conditioned to chase external validation, the promotion, the praise, the like, the approval, as the primary measure of our worth. We are, in essence, building the beautiful house of our life on a floodplain, wondering why we feel so insecure every time it starts to rain. The core issue isn't your lack of talent, intelligence, or desire. The issue is that you have a faulty operating system. An operating system that gives the outside world far too much power over your inner world. But there is another way to live. It's a life where you are the cause, not the effect. It's a life where you can face criticism, setbacks, and uncertainty without crumbling, because your foundation is built on something unshakable. It's a life where you are no longer beatable, not because you never lose, but because you can no longer be psychologically defeated. This book is your guide to building that life by cultivating what I call the sovereign self. A sovereign self is not a ruler over others, but the absolute, calm, and wise ruler of their own inner world, their thoughts, their reactions, and their choices. It's a state of being where your self-worth is generated internally, not requested externally. It's an inner fortress, built brick by brick, that protects your focus, your peace, and your forward momentum from the chaos of the outside world. To be unbeatable is not to be invincible. It is not to be immune to pain or disappointment. Life will always have its challenges. You will lose a game. You will miss a target. You will face rejection. To be unbeatable means that when these things happen, you never lose yourself. Your core remains intact, ready to learn, adapt, and move forward with your purpose clear and your spirit unbroken. That is the unbeatable proposition, and this book is your roadmap to claiming it. Over the next 10 chapters, we will install a new operating system for your mind. We will do this by systematically exploring and implementing 10 genius habits. This is not a random list of life hacks. It is a cohesive and elegant system designed to build your inner sovereignty from the ground up. The journey is divided into 2 parts. First, we will construct the 5 foundational pillars. These are the internal mindsets and principles, like radical accountability and the antifragile mindset, that form the unshakable bedrock of your inner fortress. This is the work of being.
Second, we will build the 5 actionable architectures. These are the external habits and systems, like the Keystone action and the recovery protocol, that express your inner sovereignty and protect it in the real world. This is the work of doing. This is not a book about changing your personality. It is a book about consciously choosing it. It's about taking back the keys to your own mind. By the time you turn the final page, you will possess the complete blueprint for building a life of profound resilience, unwavering purpose, and deep internal calm. You have felt the anxiety of the drifting self long enough. It's time to stop reacting to the world and start commanding your place within it. It's time to become the master of your inner realm. Your journey to becoming unbeatable begins now. Let's build your sovereign self together. The 5 foundational pillars, forging your inner fortress. Welcome to the heart of the forge. The next 5 chapters are the most important in this book. Before you can build a life of unbeatable action, you must first construct an unbeatable mind. The external world is chaotic, unpredictable, and loud. It will constantly test your resolve. The 5 foundational pillars are the internal principles you will install in your mind's operating system to ensure you can meet those tests not with anxiety, but with calm authority. They're the bedrock upon which your sovereign self will be built. Think of this as pouring the concrete foundation for a skyscraper. It isn't the most glamorous part of the construction, but without it, everything built on top will eventually collapse. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The first pillar, radical accountability. Own your response. There is a single belief that separates the drifting self from the sovereign self. It is the bright line that divides a life of reaction from a life of creation. It is the non-negotiable price of admission to an unbeatable life. It is radical accountability. This is the unwavering, absolute commitment to owning 100% of your responses, your interpretations, and your choices, regardless of the external event. Now, let's be crystal clear about what this does not mean. It does not mean blaming yourself for things that are genuinely outside of your control. It does not mean taking the blame for a hurricane, a stock market crash, or another person's poor behavior. That isn't accountability, that's self-flagellation.
Radical accountability is about differentiating between fault and responsibility. Fault looks to the past. It's about assigning blame. Whose fault was it that the project is delayed? Responsibility looks to the future. It's about generating a solution. The project is delayed. What is my responsible next step? The drifting self is obsessed with fault. They waste precious mental and emotional energy assigning blame, complaining about the injustice, and explaining why they are the victim of circumstances. Their favorite question is, why is this happening to me?
The sovereign self, on the other hand, is concerned only with responsibility. They accept the reality of the situation, no matter how unfair, and immediately pivot to the one and only thing they have absolute control over, their response. Their defining question is, "This is happening, what will I do about it?" This mental shift is the most powerful thing you can do to reclaim your life. It's the move from being a passenger in your own life to grabbing the steering wheel with both hands. This isn't just philosophy, it's a core principle of psychological resilience. In the 1950s, psychologist Julian B. Rotter developed the concept of locus of control. People with an external locus of control believe their lives are governed by outside forces, luck, fate, other people. They feel powerless. People with an internal locus of control believe they are the primary architects of their own lives. They feel powerful. Decades of research have shown that an internal locus of control is linked to greater success, better health, and higher levels of happiness. Radical accountability is the act of consciously choosing an internal locus of control every single day. Let me tell you a story about a man named Curtis. At 22, Curtis was wrongly convicted of a crime he did not commit and sentenced to life in prison. He was thrown into an environment designed to strip a person of all agency and hope. By every conceivable measure, he was a victim of a catastrophic injustice. It was not his fault. In that concrete cell, Curtis could have let his story be of fault. He could have spent his days consumed by rage and bitterness. No one would have blamed him. That would be the story of a drifting self, pushed under by the cruelest of waves. But Curtis chose a different path. He accepted the brutal reality of his situation and asked the sovereign question, "What will I do about it?" He decided to take responsibility not for his incarceration, but for his response to it. He started reading. He earned his high school diploma, then a college degree, then a law degree, all from behind bars. He became a jailhouse lawyer, helping other inmates with their cases. He refused to let the external circumstances of his life dictate the state of his inner world. He owned his mind, his education, and his purpose. After 20 years, with the help of a dedicated legal team, his conviction was overturned. He was a free man. But the truth is, he had freed his mind 2 decades earlier. Curtis didn't wait for the world to give him justice to start living a life of purpose. He practiced radical accountability in the most extreme conditions imaginable. Your challenges are likely not as severe as Curtis's, but the principle is the same. The critical coworker, the unexpected bill, the traffic jam. These are all opportunities to practice. Do you focus on who is to blame? Or do you take a deep breath and decide what your most responsible, effective next move will be? Owning your response is the ultimate power. It's the one thing no one can ever take from you. It is the first and most crucial pillar of your inner fortress. Forge your pillar, the ownership audit. For the next week, I want you to perform a daily ownership audit. At the end of each day, identify one thing that caused you frustration or anxiety. Then write down the answers to these 3 questions. The fault view. In what ways did I blame someone or something else for this situation? For example, my boss is so disorganized, that's why the meeting was a disaster. Be honest and non-judgmental. The responsibility view. Regardless of fault, what part of my response was 100% within my control? For example, my preparation, my emotional reaction to the disorganization, how I chose to communicate afterward. The sovereign action. If this happens again, what is one thing I could do differently to create a better outcome or protect my inner peace? For example, next time I will send a preparatory email to confirm the agenda, and if things are chaotic, I will take a moment to pause before reacting. This exercise isn't about shaming yourself. It's about training your brain to stop looking for scapegoats and start looking for levers of power. The pillar in summary. The core idea. Shift your focus from fault, who is to blame, to responsibility, what's my next move?
The mindset shift. Move from asking, why is this happening to me, to, this is happening, what will I do about it? The payoff. You reclaim an enormous amount of mental energy and move from a state of powerlessness, a victim, to a state of power, a creator. The action. Practice the ownership audit to retrain your brain to see your own agency in every situation. Chapter 2. The second pillar, intentional ignorance. Choose your inputs. Now that you have committed to owning your response, we must protect the mind that creates that response. In the 21st century, one of the greatest threats to your sovereignty is not a physical enemy, but a constant, overwhelming flood of information. The second pillar of the sovereign self is intentional ignorance. This may sound counterintuitive. We live in an age that glorifies being in the know. We're told that to be successful, we must consume more, know more, and react faster. The result is a state of perpetual cognitive overload. Your phone buzzes with breaking news, your feed is an endless scroll of outrage and opinion, and your inbox is a bottomless pit of other people's priorities. This constant deluge is not making you smarter or more effective. It is making you weaker. Neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, in his book The Organized Mind, explains that our brains have a limited capacity for attention and decision-making. Every time you check a notification, scroll through a feed, or weigh in on a trivial debate, you are spending a finite resource. You are depleting the very mental energy you need to do deep work, solve complex problems, and regulate your emotions. The drifting self believes they must pay attention to everything. They are terrified of missing out. They allow their mental environment to be dictated by algorithms and news cycles, leaving them anxious, distracted, and mentally exhausted. The sovereign self understands that their focus is their most valuable currency. They don't let just anyone make a withdrawal. They practice intentional ignorance, the conscious, strategic decision to ignore what is irrelevant, distracting, or disempowering in order to create space for what truly matters. This isn't about being uninformed, it's about being selectively informed. It's the difference between drinking from a fire hose and drinking a curated glass of clean water. Consider Cassandra, the CEO of a fast-growing tech company.
Journalists often comment on her remarkable clarity and calm demeanor in a notoriously chaotic industry. Her secret isn't a complex productivity system, it's a ruthless information diet. Cassandra has a simple rule: no news and no email before 10 a.m. The first 2 hours of her day are dedicated to deep, strategic thinking about her company's most important goals. She is ignorant of the morning's political outrage or the stock market's momentary dip. She knows that 99% of it will be irrelevant by lunchtime, and the 1% that matters will find its way to her. She has no social media apps on her phone. She reasons that her role is to be a creator, not a consumer. She curates the people she listens to, a small, trusted circle of advisors and thinkers, and intentionally ignores the cacophony of online punditry. She isn't out of touch, she is deeply in touch with the things that have the power to move her mission forward. She has built a fortress around her attention. Intentional ignorance is the active expression of sovereignty. You are the gatekeeper of your own mind. You decide what comes in and what stays out. By starving distractions, you feed your focus. By ignoring the trivial, you create the capacity to master the essential. Are you letting the world scream at you all day, or are you choosing to listen to the whispers of your own purpose? Forge your pillar, the 7-day information diet. For 1 week, I want you to become a ruthless curator of your mental environment. This is an experiment to show you how much energy you can reclaim. Morning sanctity. For the first 60 minutes of your day, do not check email, news, or social media. Use this time for something that aligns with your goals: exercise, journaling, deep work, or quiet reflection. You are setting the tone for the day rather than letting the world set it for you. Notification nullification. Go into your phone settings and turn off all non-essential notifications. No banners, no buzzes, no red bubbles. The only things that should actively interrupt you are calls or texts from your most important contacts. You will check apps on your schedule, not theirs. Curated consumption. Choose specific, limited times to consume information. For example, you might check the news for 15 minutes at lunch and social media for 20 minutes in the evening. Schedule it like an appointment. The rest of the time, you are off the air. The "is this useful?"
Filter. Before you click on an article, watch a video, or enter a debate, ask yourself a simple question. Is consuming this essential for my well-being or my most important goals? If the answer is no, practice the art of scrolling on by. At the end of the week, reflect on your mental state. Notice any changes in your anxiety levels, your ability to focus, and your overall sense of control. The pillar in summary, the core idea: your attention is a finite and precious resource. Stop giving it away for free. The mindset shift. Move from a fear of missing out, FOMO, to a joy of missing out on things that don't serve you. The payoff. You reclaim mental energy, deepen your focus, reduce anxiety, and create the cognitive space required for high-level thinking. The action. Commit to a 7-day information diet to experience the power of a curated mind. Chapter 3. The third pillar. The antifragile mindset. Gain from disorder. You have taken ownership of your response and built a fortress around your attention. Now, we must address the nature of the attacks themselves. Life will inevitably throw shocks, stressors, and failures at you. The third pillar ensures that these attacks do not weaken you, but actually make you stronger. This pillar is the antifragile mindset. The term antifragile was coined by the essayist and risk analyst Nassim Nicholas Taleb. It's a concept that goes a step beyond resilience or robustness. A fragile object, like a glass teacup, shatters under stress. A resilient object, like a rubber ball, withstands stress and bounces back to its original shape. An antifragile system, however, doesn't just survive stress, it feeds on it. It gets stronger, smarter, and more capable as a result of being challenged. Think of human bones. Under the stress of weight-bearing exercise, they don't break. They develop microfractures that heal back even denser and stronger. Your immune system is another example. When exposed to a pathogen, it doesn't just fight it off, it develops antibodies, becoming more robust against future attacks. The drifting self is fragile. A harsh criticism shatters their confidence. A failed project convinces them they are a failure. They view setbacks as evidence of their inadequacy. The sovereign self cultivates an anti-fragile mindset. They see challenges not as threats to their ego, but as essential training for their growth. They understand that stress is just information. This is the next evolution of the growth mindset, popularized by psychologist Carol Dweck. A growth mindset says, I can improve with effort. An anti-fragile mindset says, the very thing that is trying to break me is the fuel for my improvement. Let me tell you about Beatrice. She was a brilliant software engineer who poured 3 years of her life and all her savings into her first startup, a social media app for local communities. The launch was a disaster. The technology was buggy, the user adoption was abysmal, and within 6 months, the company was bankrupt. Beatrice was devastated. She felt like a total failure. For a few months, she was fragile. She hid from the world, replaying her mistakes, her confidence shattered. But then, slowly, she began to shift her perspective. She started a post-mortem document, not to blame herself, but to extract every single lesson from the wreckage.
Lesson 1. My marketing was aimed at the wrong demographic.
Lesson 2. I fell in love with my code instead of my customer's problem. Lesson 3. I didn't build a strong enough advisory board. She began to see the failed startup not as a tombstone for her career, but as the most expensive and valuable MBA she could ever earn. The pain of the failure was transformed into a data set of priceless insights. 2 years later, Beatrice launched a new company. This one was different. It was lean, customer-obsessed, and built on the hard-won lessons of her first attempt. It solved a real-world business problem she had discovered during her postmortem. Today, that company is a leader in its niche, valued at over $100 million. When people ask about her success, she smiles and says, "It was all made possible by my first spectacular failure." Beatrice didn't just bounce back. She used the shock of failure to become exponentially more capable. That is anti-fragility in action. Every time you receive difficult feedback, every time a project goes sideways, every time you are rejected, you have a choice. You can let it break you, fragile. You can endure it and get back to where you were, resilient. Or you can ask the anti-fragile question, how can I use this energy to become better? Forge your pillar, the failure resume. We all have a resume of our successes. Now, you are going to create a failure resume. This is a private document for your eyes only. List your failures. Identify 3 to 5 times in your life, personal or professional, where you tried something and it did not go as planned. It could be a failed project, a job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, or a business that didn't work out. Extract the lessons. Under each failure, create a new bulleted list titled Lessons Learned and Strengths Gained. For each point, write down at least 2 things you learned from the experience. What skills did you gain? What did you learn about yourself? What painful but valuable insight did you acquire? Example, failure. My first business failed. Lessons learned. How to read a balance sheet. The importance of customer discovery. Resilience in the face of uncertainty. Who my real friends are. Reframe the narrative. Look at your list of lessons and strengths. Acknowledge that you would not possess this valuable knowledge without having gone through that difficult experience. The failure was the price of admission for the wisdom. This exercise actively reframes past pain into a present-day asset. It trains your mind to see stressors not as indictments of your worth, but as investments in your growth. The pillar in summary, the core idea: don't just withstand stress, use it as a catalyst to get stronger, smarter, and more capable. The mindset shift. Move from fearing failure and criticism to seeing them as valuable data and training opportunities. The payoff. You become less afraid to take risks, you learn at an accelerated rate, and you transform life's inevitable setbacks into your greatest competitive advantages. The action: create a failure resume to codify the lessons learned from past challenges, turning them into a source of strength. Chapter 4, the 4th pillar, purposeful alignment. Connect to your why. You are now owning your response, curating your focus, and gaining strength from disorder. But to what end? A fortress without a kingdom to protect is just an empty building. An unbeatable warrior without a mission is just a person looking for a fight. The 4th pillar gives your sovereignty direction. It is the engine that drives you forward, the North Star that guides your decisions. It is purposeful alignment. A sovereign self is not pushed by the random winds of whim and desire. They are pulled by the powerful gravitational force of a clearly defined purpose. Purpose is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in self-help. We're often told to find our passion, as if it's a treasure chest buried on a deserted island. This vague advice often leads to frustration. A more effective approach is to think of purpose not as a thing you find, but as a direction you choose. It's the answer to a simple yet profound question. What meaningful problem do I want to help solve? This is the central idea behind Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, developed after he survived the horrors of the Holocaust. Frankl observed that the prisoners who had the greatest chance of survival were those who held on to a sense of purpose.
a reason to live beyond their suffering. Whether it was the desire to see a loved one again or a piece of work they felt compelled to finish, purpose was their ultimate anchor. As Nietzsche, whom Frankl often quoted, wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." When your daily actions are aligned with this why, something magical happens. Mundane tasks are infused with meaning. Effort ceases to feel like a drain and starts to feel like an investment. Your motivation becomes intrinsic, generated from within, making you far less dependent on external rewards like praise or money. Consider the story of David, a high school history teacher. After 10 years on the job, he was burning out. He felt like a cog in a bureaucratic machine, buried in grading papers and dealing with classroom discipline. He was a drifting self, pushed along by the school bell schedule, losing his love for the job. During a summer break, he felt a deep sense of crisis. He considered quitting. Instead, he took out a journal and asked himself a series of questions. When do I feel most alive in my work? What problem did I originally want to solve by becoming a teacher? He remembered his own experience as bored, disengaged student and the one teacher who sparked his curiosity. He redefined his purpose. It wasn't to teach the history curriculum. It was to spark genuine curiosity in at least one student every single day. This simple shift changed everything. Now, preparing a lesson plan wasn't a chore. It was an opportunity to design a curiosity trap. Dealing with a disruptive student wasn't a battle. It was a puzzle to figure out what might engage them. Grading a paper wasn't just about finding errors. It was about looking for a flicker of original thought he could encourage. His why was now aligned with his what. His job hadn't changed, but his experience of it was transformed. He was no longer just a teacher. He was a curiosity engineer. He was powered by purpose, and that made him unbeatable in the face of the daily grind. Your purpose doesn't have to be as grand as ending world hunger. It just has to be meaningful to you. It is the theme that connects the dots of your life and turns a random collection of actions into a coherent, compelling story. Forge your pillar, the purpose compass. You don't need to go on a mountain retreat to define your purpose. You can start right now with a pen and paper. This exercise, the purpose compass, will help you find your direction. Answer these 3 questions with complete honesty. The energy question. What gives me energy? Make a list of activities, topics, or tasks that when you do them, leave you feeling more energized than when you started. Don't judge them. It could be organizing a closet, solving a Sudoku, explaining a complex idea, or listening to a friend's problems. This points to your natural strengths and inclinations. The anger question. What problem in the world makes me productively angry? Productively angry means a problem that doesn't just make you complain, but makes you think someone should really do something about this. It could be animal cruelty, inefficient systems at your work, financial illiteracy, or the lack of green spaces in your city. This points to what you care about. The service question. Who do I most want to help? Think of a group of people you feel a natural empathy for. Is it struggling artists, overwhelmed parents, confused young professionals, small business owners? This points to where you can direct your energy. Now, look at your answers. Your purpose lies at the intersection of these 3 lists. It's about using what gives you energy to solve a problem that angers you in service of people you want to help. Phrase it as a simple mission statement. For David, it was, I use my energy for storytelling, Q1, to solve the problem of student boredom, Q2, for young people who feel disengaged, Q3. The pillar in summary. The core idea, a clear sense of purpose, is the ultimate intrinsic motivator. It aligns your daily actions with a meaningful why. The mindset shift. Move from finding your one true passion to choosing a meaningful problem to solve. The payoff? You unlock a deep well of motivation that is independent of external validation. Mundane tasks gain meaning, and you can endure hardship more easily. The action. Use the Purpose Compass exercise to define your personal mission statement and guide your actions. Chapter 5. The fifth pillar. The art of emotional regulation. Master your state. We have arrived at the final and perhaps most advanced pillar of the inner fortress. You have taken accountability, protected your focus, learned to grow from stress, and aligned with your purpose. But there is one potential saboteur who lives inside the fortress walls: your own unchecked emotions. The fifth pillar is the art of emotional regulation. Let's be clear. A sovereign self is not a robot. This is not about suppressing emotions or becoming a cold, unfeeling stoic. Emotions are vital data. They are messengers that tell you what's important, what's threatening, and what's joyful. To ignore them is to fly a plane without an instrument panel. The goal is not to eliminate emotion, but to skillfully manage it.
It's the difference between being a passenger on a runaway emotional train and being the calm, experienced conductor. Neuroscientists talk about a phenomenon called the amygdala hijack. The amygdala is the brain's ancient, primitive threat detector. When it perceives a danger, whether it's a saber-toothed tiger or a critical email from your boss, it can flood your system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, short-circuiting your rational brain, the prefrontal cortex. In this state, you can't think clearly. You are primed for a fight, flight, or freeze response. This is the biological basis of losing your cool. The drifting self lives in a state of frequent amygdala hijacks. A condescending comment sends them into a defensive rage. The fear of failure paralyzes them. They are at the mercy of their emotional triggers. The sovereign self practices creating a crucial space between the emotional trigger and their response. As Viktor Frankl so wisely wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." The art of emotional regulation is the practice of widening that space. This is the core skill taught to people in the highest stakes professions. Let me tell you about Diane. Diane is a former FBI hostage negotiator who now trains corporate executives. Her number one lesson isn't about what to say, it's about how to be. She explains that in a tense negotiation, the single most important factor is her own physiological state. If her heart is racing and her mind is clouded with fear or anger, she is already lost. The other side will sense it, and her ability to think strategically will be zero. So she trains people in tactical self-regulation. Before a difficult conversation, she takes 2 minutes to do what she calls a state check. She labels her feelings non-judgmentally, like, "Okay, I'm feeling anxious about this." Then she uses tactical breathing, a slow 4-second inhale, a 4-second hold, and a 6-second exhale to physically calm her nervous system. This simple act sends a signal from the body back to the brain. We are safe. You can turn the rational mind back on. By managing her own state first, she can walk into a high-stakes room with a clear head. She can listen more effectively, think more creatively, and respond more strategically.
She doesn't suppress her emotions. She acknowledges them and then skillfully pilots her own biology. She creates that precious space between stimulus and response. This is a superpower available to all of us. When you feel that hot flash of anger after a colleague takes credit for your idea, or that cold dread when you get bad news, that is your moment to practice. That is your moment to choose sovereignty over reaction. Forge your pillar, the STOP protocol. This is an in-the-moment tool you can use anytime you feel a strong negative emotion begin to take over. It's a simple 4-step protocol to create that crucial space. Memorize the acronym STOP. S. Stop. The moment you feel the hijack beginning, physically stop what you are doing. If you're about to type an angry email, take your hands off the keyboard. If you're about to lash out verbally, close your mouth. Do not act. T. Take a breath. Take one slow, deliberate breath. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts, hold for a moment, and exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 counts. This is the fastest way to interrupt the stress response. O. Observe. Briefly turn your attention inward. Name the emotion without judgment. This is anger. This is fear. This is embarrassment. As neuroscientist Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's work suggests, the simple act of labeling an emotion with granularity can reduce its intensity. You are not your emotion. You are the observer of it. P. Proceed. Now that you have created a small pocket of calm and clarity, ask yourself the sovereign question. What is my most effective, purpose-aligned next move? Then, and only then, proceed with that chosen response. Practice this every time you feel emotionally triggered. At first, the space you create might be a split second. With practice, that space will widen, giving you more and more time to choose a response that serves you, rather than one you will regret. The pillar in summary. The core idea. You are not your emotions. The goal is not to suppress them, but to manage them skillfully. The mindset shift. Move from being a reactor to your emotions to being the calm, conscious manager of your emotional state. The payoff. You gain immense clarity under pressure, improve your relationships by avoiding regrettable reactions, and maintain your inner peace even in chaotic situations.
The action. Use the STOP. Protocol. Anytime you feel an emotional hijack beginning, creating the space needed to choose a sovereign response. The 5 actionable architectures, building your outer world. You have done the deep internal work. You have forged the 5 pillars of your inner fortress. You have committed to owning your response, protecting your focus, growing from hardship, aligning with purpose, and mastering your emotions. You have built a mind that is strong, clear, and sovereign. But a fortress is not meant to be a prison. Its purpose is to provide a secure base from which to project power, influence, and purpose into the world. The next 5 chapters are about action. They are the architectures, the deliberate external systems you will design to express your inner sovereignty. If the pillars were about being, the architectures are about doing. They are the bridge between your inner state and your outer results. This is how you move from feeling unbeatable to acting unbeatable. This is how you build your kingdom. Chapter 6. The first architecture, the Keystone action, the 1% win. There is a dream killer that stalks us all. It's the overwhelming feeling that, to make real change, we must do something massive, heroic, and immediate. We decide to get healthy, so we vow to go to the gym for 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. We decide to write a book, so we block off entire weekends expecting to produce thousands of words. A week later, we're exhausted, discouraged, and back where we started, now with an added layer of guilt. We aimed for a tidal wave of change and ended up drowning in our own ambition. The first architecture of the sovereign self rejects this all-or-nothing approach. It is built on a far more elegant and powerful principle. It is the Keystone action. In architecture, a keystone is the central wedge-shaped stone at the apex of an arch. It is the last stone placed, and it is the one that locks all the others into position, bearing the weight of the entire structure. It is small, but its strategic placement gives the arch its incredible strength. A keystone action is the personal equivalent. It is the one small, consistent daily habit that creates a positive cascading ripple effect across every other area of your life. It is your 1% win that leads to 100% transformation. This concept, explored by authors like Charles Duhigg in The Power of Habit, is the practical application of your new sovereign mindset.
It's how you take the pillar of radical accountability and translate it into a single, non-negotiable physical act. The drifting self waits for motivation to strike before taking massive action. The sovereign self ignores motivation and executes one small strategic action that creates motivation. Let me tell you about Leo. For years, Leo dreamed of being a novelist. He had a great idea and a passion for writing, but he was hopelessly blocked. He'd sit down at his laptop, stare at the blank page, feel the crushing weight of trying to write a 300-page book, and give up after 20 minutes to go watch TV. He felt like a failure because his actions weren't matching his identity. Then he learned about the power of a keystone. He made a new rule, so simple it felt ridiculous. He had to write just one sentence a day. That was it. Not a page, not a chapter. One sentence. The first day, he wrote his sentence and felt a tiny flicker of success. The next day, he wrote another. Soon, something strange began to happen. Often, that one sentence would turn into a paragraph. Sometimes, it would turn into a full page. The act of starting, in the smallest way possible, broke the spell of the blank page. But the ripple effect was even bigger. Because he was now a writer who wrote today, he started making other small changes. He'd go to bed a little earlier so he could be fresh for his morning sentence. He started reading more to feed his creative well. He even started talking about his book with more confidence. That one tiny habit began to realign his entire life. 2 years later, Leo finished his novel. His keystone action wasn't write a book. It was write one sentence. Your keystone action isn't the goal itself. It's the trigger that makes the goal inevitable. For some, it might be putting on your running shoes, which almost always leads to a walk or run. For others, it might be drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, which kickstarts a healthier day. It is small enough to be immune to excuses, but powerful enough to change everything. Forge your architecture, the Keystone Identifier. Your task is to find and install your own keystone action. Don't overthink it. Simplicity is the key. Choose your domain. Pick one major area of your life where you want to see significant progress, e.g., health, career, finances, creativity. Brainstorm 2-minute actions. List 5 to 10 tiny actions related to that domain that take less than 2 minutes to complete. For health, it could be do one push-up, lay out your gym clothes, put one piece of fruit in your bag, meditate for 60 seconds. For finances, it could be check your bank balance, transfer $5 to savings, read one paragraph of a finance book. Ask the ripple effect question. Look at your list and ask of each item, if I did only this one thing every single day, which one would be most likely to naturally pull other positive behaviors along with it? This is your candidate. Commit for 30 days. Take your chosen keystone action and commit to doing it every single day for 30 days. The goal is not the outcome. The goal is to not break the chain. Track it on a calendar. This is your first act of architectural construction. The architecture in summary. The core idea: small, strategic, consistent action beats short-term, massive intensity every time. The mindset shift: move from I need to feel motivated to act to my actions will create my motivation. The payoff: you overcome procrastination, build momentum effortlessly, and create a positive chain of good habits that leads to massive long-term change. The action: use the Keystone Identifier to find and implement one small daily habit that will hold the arch of your new life together. Chapter 7. The Second Architecture. Systematic Curiosity. The Growth System. Your Keystone action has given you momentum. You're moving. The second architecture determines the direction of that movement. A sovereign self understands that growth is not a passive event, it is an active pursuit. You must build a system to ensure you are always learning, adapting, and increasing your value. This architecture is your growth system, powered by systematic curiosity. The drifting self is a passive consumer of information. They scroll through headlines, watch random videos, and absorb whatever the algorithm feeds them. They mistake this endless stream of trivia for learning. The sovereign self is a systematic architect of their own knowledge. They don't just like to learn. They have a structured process for acquiring and integrating new skills and information that align with their purpose. This is the external expression of the antifragile mindset. You are actively seeking eustress, beneficial stress for your mind, to make it stronger. Many of the most successful people in history have followed a simple but powerful framework for this, often called the 5-hour rule. The principle, observed in figures from Benjamin Franklin to Bill Gates, involves dedicating at least 1 hour a day or 5 hours a week to deliberate learning. But just consuming information isn't enough. A true growth system requires a feedback loop. The most effective one I've ever found is the learn, apply, teach loop. Learn. You intentionally acquire a new skill or piece of knowledge. You read a book, take a course, watch a tutorial. This is the input. Apply. You must immediately find a way to use that new knowledge in a real-world context. This solidifies the learning and moves it from theoretical to practical. This is the experiment. Teach. You explain the concept to someone else. You can write a summary, explain it to a friend, or post about it online. The act of teaching forces you to clarify your own understanding and reveals any gaps in your knowledge. This is the integration. Consider Frank, a stay-at-home father who had left a corporate job to raise his kids. After a few years, he began to feel his professional skills were becoming obsolete. He feared he was falling behind, a common anxiety. He decided to build a growth system. He committed to the 5-hour rule, scheduling an hour every afternoon while his youngest was napping. He used his purpose compass from Chapter 4 and identified that he was interested in helping small businesses. Learn. He chose to learn about digital marketing and used his hour to take a free online course. Apply. After a few weeks, he went to his favorite local bakery and offered to run their social media account for free for 1 month just to apply what he was learning. Teach. Every Friday, he would write a short post on his personal blog summarizing one key marketing tactic he had learned and implemented that week. Within 6 months, Frank had not only mastered a valuable new skill, but had a portfolio of real results from the bakery. His blog posts were clear and insightful because he'd had to truly understand the material to write them. Soon, other local businesses were reaching out, asking to hire him. Frank had not only regained his confidence, he had built an entirely new career from his kitchen table, all by transforming his passive curiosity into a deliberate system. Forge your architecture. Build your growth system. It's time to stop being a consumer and become an architect of your knowledge. Let's design your system for the next 90 days. Schedule your 5 hours. Look at your calendar for the upcoming week and block out 5 hours dedicated solely to learning. It can be 1 hour a day or 2 longer blocks. Treat these appointments as non-negotiable. This is your time. Choose your subject. What one skill or topic, if you made significant progress in it over the next 90 days, would have the biggest positive impact on your life? Choose something that aligns with your purpose. Be specific, not learn about business, but learn to read a company's financial statements. Design your loop. For your chosen subject, define your learn, apply, teach plan. Learn. What book will you read? What course will you take? Apply. What small, low-stakes project can you start? How can you use this skill this week? Teach. Who can you explain it to? Can you write a 1-page summary for yourself? This system transforms learning from a vague intention into a reliable process, ensuring that the sovereign self is always getting stronger, smarter, and more valuable. The architecture in summary. The core idea: Don't just consume information, build a deliberate system for acquiring and integrating new skills. The mindset shift. Move from being a passive consumer of information to an active architect of your knowledge.
The payoff: you accelerate your learning, build valuable skills that increase your real-world options, and ensure you never stagnate. The action? Design your own 90-day growth system using the 5-hour rule and the learn, apply, teach loop. Chapter 8. The third architecture. The let them boundary. Reclaim your energy. You are now acting with purpose and growing systematically. This new level of action will attract attention. Some of it will be positive, but some will be critical, envious, or simply confused. To protect the energy you are cultivating, you must build an architecture of emotional self-defense. This architecture is a boundary, and it is activated with two of the most liberating words in the English language: let them. This powerful concept, popularized by speaker Mel Robbins, is the ultimate external expression of radical accountability and intentional ignorance. You have already accepted that you are 100% responsible for your own reactions. Now, you must fully accept that you have 0% control over the feelings, thoughts, and opinions of others. The let them theory is the practice of dropping the exhausting, impossible burden of managing other people's perceptions of you. Are people gossiping about your new business venture? Let them. Does your cousin think your career change is a mistake? Let them. Did a colleague misunderstand your email and now thinks you're aggressive? Let them. Are people wrong about you? Let them be wrong. The drifting self is a slave to the opinions of others. They waste countless hours and immense emotional energy trying to explain, clarify, and defend themselves, desperately trying to control a narrative they will never own. The sovereign self understands that this is a losing game. The only opinion you can control is your own opinion of yourself. By releasing the need to manage everyone else's, you reclaim a staggering amount of energy that can be reinvested into your Keystone action and your growth system. This isn't just pop psychology. It's a principle known in family systems theory as differentiation of self. Developed by psychiatrist Murray Bowen, differentiation is the ability to remain a strong, independent self while still being in a relationship with others. It's the capacity to not become emotionally fused with their reactions. When your mother is anxious, you don't have to become anxious. When your boss is angry, you don't have to absorb that anger.
The let them boundary is the mantra of a well-differentiated self. Gloria, a project manager, was a chronic people pleaser. She was brilliant at her job, but she was perpetually exhausted because she was constantly managing the emotional states of her team, her boss, and her clients. If someone seemed slightly unhappy, she would internalize it, wondering what she did wrong and how she could fix their feeling. During one particularly stressful project, a stakeholder from another department sent a curt email implying Gloria's team was behind schedule. They weren't. The old Gloria would have sprung into action. She would have felt a surge of anxiety, spent an hour crafting a perfectly worded diplomatic response with charts and data to prove her point, and then worried all night about whether the stakeholder was still upset. But this time, Gloria had been practicing the pillars. She took a breath, emotional regulation, and instead of reacting, she thought, he's wrong about us. He has bad data. And then she deployed the architecture. Let him be wrong. Instead of wasting an hour on an emotional damage control mission, she spent 5 minutes forwarding the email to her boss with a simple note. FYI, my data shows we are on track, continuing to focus on our deadline. Then she went back to doing her actual job. She reclaimed an hour of her day and, more importantly, a huge amount of mental peace. Paradoxically, her calm, fact-based demeanor earned her more respect in the long run than her frantic people-pleasing ever had. Forge your architecture, the let them liberation.
This architecture is built in the moments you feel the pull to manage others' emotions. Identify the hook. The next time you feel a surge of anxiety or frustration related to someone else's opinion of you, pause. What specific feeling are you trying to control? For example, I need to make my friend understand why I canceled our plans so she isn't disappointed in me. State the fear. Articulate the underlying fear. I'm afraid she will think I am a bad friend. Deploy the mantra. Say the words either out loud or to yourself. Let her think I am a bad friend. Feel the release. You cannot control her interpretation. You can only control your own actions and integrity. Redirect the energy. Now that you've released the burden, what is the sovereign thing to do? A sovereign action is authentic and responsible. Perhaps it's a simple, honest text. So sorry to cancel, I'm completely swamped.
I'll reach out next week to reschedule. You do your part. You let them do theirs. This practice feels radical at first, but with time, it will become an automatic boundary that guards your energy and peace with unshakable strength. The architecture in summary. The core idea: you cannot control how other people think or feel about you. Stop trying. The mindset shift. Move from desperately managing others' perceptions to calmly managing your own integrity. The payoff. You reclaim enormous amounts of time and energy, reduce anxiety, and develop deeper self-trust. The action. Practice the let them liberation exercise to release the need to control others' opinions and reclaim your own power. Chapter 9. The fourth architecture. The recovery protocol. The proactive pause. You are now operating at a higher level. You are consistent, growing, and emotionally protected. But a high-performance engine requires high-quality maintenance. In our always-on culture, the most neglected, and therefore most powerful architecture, is that of intelligent rest. This is your recovery protocol. Hustle culture has sold us a dangerous lie that exhaustion is a status symbol and that rest is for the weak. This is a fragile, amateur mindset. Any professional, be it an elite athlete, a top musician, or a world-class surgeon, knows that performance is not just about the stress you can endure, but about the quality of your recovery. The drifting self works until they collapse. They see rest as a sign of failure, something to feel guilty about. They burn out, their performance nosedives, and their health suffers. The sovereign self treats rest as a non-negotiable, strategic component of their success. They don't rest because they are exhausted. They rest so that they never become exhausted. They are proactive, not reactive. This architecture is the essential partner to the antifragile mindset. Your body and mind can only gain from stress if they are given the time and resources to heal back stronger. As sleep scientist Dr. Matthew Walker has conclusively shown, a single night of poor sleep can significantly impair your immune system, memory, focus, and emotional regulation. Rest isn't a luxury. It's a biological necessity for the very sovereignty you are trying to build. Your recovery protocol is a deliberate system with two key components: sleep hygiene and the proactive pause. Let me tell you about Helen, a competitive marathon runner. For a year, she was stuck in a performance plateau. She was training harder than ever, adding more miles and more intensity, but her race times weren't improving. She was frustrated, tired, and constantly sore. Her new coach didn't change her workout. He changed her recovery. He implemented a strict protocol. Sleep. Helen had to be in bed by 10 p.m. every night, no exceptions. Digital sunset. All screens had to be off 90 minutes before bed, replaced with reading or light stretching. Active recovery. The day after a hard workout was no longer a day off, but a day of active recovery, a gentle swim or slow walk to increase blood flow and aid muscle repair. Proactive pauses.
He even scheduled 10-minute do-nothing breaks into her training days to let her nervous system downregulate. Helen was skeptical. It felt like she was doing less. But within a month, the results were astounding. She felt fresher, stronger, and less prone to injury. The next marathon she ran, she shattered her personal best time. Her breakthrough didn't come from more stress. It came from more strategic rest. You are an athlete in the marathon of your own life. You must treat your recovery with the same seriousness. Forge your architecture. Design your recovery protocol. Your mission is to stop seeing rest as a leftover and start seeing it as a key ingredient. Design your protocol this week. Bookend your day with rest. The wake-up. For the first 10 minutes of your day, before you touch your phone, do something to gently activate your system. Stretch, hydrate, or sit in quiet reflection. The digital sunset. Set an alarm for 60 to 90 minutes before your intended bedtime. This is your signal to power down all screens: TV, phone, laptop. The blue light from screens disrupts the production of melatonin, your sleep hormone. Use this time to read a physical book, talk with a partner, or listen to calm music. Schedule your sleep. Define a specific, non-negotiable bedtime. For 1 week, treat this bedtime with the same respect you would treat a flight departure. It's not a suggestion, it's a deadline. Integrate proactive pauses. Schedule at least 2 10-minute breaks into your workday where you do not do any work. Get up, walk around, look out a window, or practice your tactical breathing from Chapter 5. This is not for slacking. It is for recharging so your on time is more focused and effective.
This architecture doesn't take time away from your goals. It multiplies the effectiveness of the time you spend on them. The architecture in summary. The core idea. Rest is not a weakness or a reward. It is a strategic, non-negotiable part of high performance. The mindset shift. Move from "I'll rest when I'm burnt out" to "I rest so that I don't burn out." The payoff. You increase your energy, deepen your focus, improve your mental and physical health, and make your efforts more sustainable and effective. The action. Design and implement your personal recovery protocol, focusing on sleep hygiene and proactive pauses. Chapter 10. The fifth architecture, the contribution engine. Give to grow. We have come to the final and most profound architecture. You have built a self that is accountable, focused, antifragile, purposeful, and emotionally regulated. You have systems for action, growth, boundaries, and recovery. You have built an impregnable sovereign self. So now what? A fortress that only ever looks inward, that only ever protects itself and hoards its resources, eventually becomes a prison. Its walls, meant for protection, begin to suffocate. The ultimate expression of sovereignty is not self-preservation, but service. The final architecture is the contribution engine. This is a system for consistently giving your value, your knowledge, your time, your attention to others. It is the architecture that ensures your personal growth serves a purpose larger than yourself. This is how you take your purposeful alignment from an internal feeling to an external reality. Research on the psychology of happiness is conclusive on this point. A life focused on contribution is a happier, more meaningful life. There's even a biological basis for it, often called the helper's high, the release of mood-elevating endorphins that occurs when we engage in acts of altruism. Giving to others is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. The drifting self thinks, "I'll contribute when I'm successful," or "I'll give back when I have more time." They see contribution as a tax on their success. The sovereign self knows that contribution is an engine for success. It reinforces your skills, deepens your sense of purpose, and expands your network in the most authentic way possible. It moves you from being merely unbeatable to being a positive, generative force in the world. Think of Mr. Peterson. After 40 years as a master carpenter, he retired. For the first 6 months, he enjoyed the rest. But soon he felt adrift. His identity was tied to his craft, and without a workshop to go to, he felt his purpose fading. His daughter suggested he volunteer at a local youth center. Reluctantly, he agreed. He started a small woodworking club for a group of at-risk teenagers. He thought he was just showing them how to use a saw and a chisel, but the act of teaching reignited his own passion. To explain a concept to a novice, he had to go back to the fundamentals, and he found he understood his own craft on a deeper level. Seeing the pride on a teen's face when they finished their first wobbly birdhouse gave him a sense of fulfillment far deeper than any paycheck ever had. The kids, in turn, felt seen and valued. Mr. Peterson will tell you that mentoring those kids was the most important work of his life. He went there to give, but he received far more in return: a renewed purpose, a sharp mind, and a powerful legacy. His contribution wasn't a tax on his retirement, it was the engine of his joy. Your contribution doesn't have to be a grand gesture, it just has to be consistent. It's an engine, not a firework. Forge your architecture. Start your contribution engine. Build a small, reliable system for giving back. Make it so easy to start that you can't say no. Identify your gift. What is one piece of knowledge, one skill, or 1 hour of your time that you could offer to someone else? Look back at your purpose compass and your growth system. What have you learned that you could share? Find a channel. Where could you offer this gift? It doesn't have to be a formal organization. It could be mentoring one junior person in your field, answering questions on an online forum for 15 minutes a week, or committing to calling one elderly relative who lives alone every Sunday. Schedule the contribution. Put it on your calendar as a recurring appointment. Every Tuesday, 4 to 4:15 p.m., review and comment on one aspiring designer's portfolio online. Or, first Saturday of the month, volunteer at the local food bank. By making your contribution a scheduled, repeatable system, you ensure it happens. You are building an engine that will power your sense of purpose and solidify your identity as someone who not only stands strong, but also lifts others up. The architecture, in summary. The core idea, the highest expression of personal strength, is service to others. Contribution is an engine for growth, not a tax on it. The mindset shift. Move from "I'll give back when I'm successful" to "giving back is a system that will help me become successful and fulfilled." The payoff? You deepen your sense of purpose, reinforce your own skills, expand your positive influence, and experience greater long-term happiness and fulfillment. The action? Start your contribution engine by identifying your gift, finding a channel, and scheduling a small, consistent act of giving. Conclusion. Becoming unbeatable, living as the sovereign self. We have reached the end of our journey together, but it is the beginning of yours. Think back to Arthur, the man we met in the introduction, a talented architect living in a state of quiet dread, a man whose confidence could be shattered by 5 careless words from his boss. He was the drifting self, a ship tossed on the chaotic seas of external validation and unexpected setbacks. Perhaps you saw a piece of yourself in his story. Most of us do. We have all felt that gnawing anxiety, that sense of being psychologically beatable, one critique, one failure, one piece of bad luck away from feeling like a fraud. But the person who is finishing this book is not the same person who started it. You now hold a different blueprint. You understand that the source of true strength is not found in the fickle outside world, but forged in the quiet, steady heat of your inner one. You now know how to stop drifting and start building. You know how to become the sovereign self. We have laid the 10 foundational stones of an unbeatable life.
We started by pouring the concrete for your inner fortress, the 5 unshakable pillars of your mindset. Radical accountability. You shifted from blaming the world to owning your response in every situation. Intentional ignorance. You became the ruthless gatekeeper of your own mind, starving distractions to feed your focus. The anti-fragile mindset. You learned to see challenges not as threats, but as the very fuel for your growth, making you stronger from stress. Purposeful alignment. You connected your daily actions to a meaningful why, unlocking an engine of intrinsic motivation. The art of emotional regulation. You learned to become the calm conductor of your inner world, creating a crucial space between trigger and response.
With that fortress built, we then designed the 5 architectures of your outer world, the systems that express your sovereignty and shape your reality. The Keystone action. You learned to ignite massive change with one small, consistent 1% win. The growth system. You committed to becoming an architect of your knowledge, ensuring you never stagnate. The let them boundary. You liberated yourself from the impossible job of managing others' opinions, reclaiming your energy. The recovery protocol. You embraced rest not as a weakness, but as a strategic weapon for high performance. The contribution engine. You found the ultimate expression of your strength in a system of giving, creating a legacy of positive impact. Look at this list. These are not 10 random habits. They are one elegant, integrated operating system for a life of purpose, resilience, and peace. The pillars create your inner strength, and the architectures project that strength into the world. They work in perfect synergy. Your purposeful alignment guides your growth system. Your emotional regulation makes your let them boundary possible. Your Keystone action is the physical start of your radical accountability. It is a complete blueprint for becoming the calm, clear, and effective ruler of your own life. But a blueprint is useless if it stays rolled up on a shelf. It is only valuable when you use it to build. And I know what you might be thinking. 10 habits. That's a lot. Where do I even begin? This brings us to your first sovereign act. Do not try to implement all 10 habits tomorrow. That is the path of the drifting self, a path of overwhelming ambition that leads to burnout. A sovereign ruler acts with strategy and precision. So here is your mission. Choose one. Read back through the chapter titles. Which one pillar or architecture calls to you the most? Which one, if you mastered it, would feel like the keystone that would make all the others easier? Is it building a fortress around your focus with intentional ignorance? Is it finally reclaiming your energy with the let them boundary? Is it starting the engine of momentum with a single keystone action? Trust your gut. The one that makes your heart beat a little bit faster. The one that feels both exciting and a little bit scary. That's your starting point. Commit to that one habit for the next 30 days. Don't worry about the other 9. Focus all your energy on installing that single piece of your new operating system. Make it non-negotiable. Build that one wall of your fortress so strong that it becomes second nature. When you have done that, you can come back and choose the next. This is how true, lasting change is made, not with a tidal wave of effort, but with the steady, deliberate placement of one stone at a time. The world will not stop testing you. The storms will still come, the critics will still criticize, and setbacks will still happen. The goal of this book was never to promise you a life free from difficulty. That is a fantasy. The goal was to make you unbeatable. And to be unbeatable is not to be immune to loss. It is to be immune to defeat. It is to know with an unshakable certainty that while the winds may howl and the waves may crash against your walls, the fortress of your inner self stands firm. It is to know that no matter what happens in the world outside,
The ruler of your inner world, your sovereign self, remains unshaken, clear-headed, and in command. You are the architect, you are the builder, and you are the ruler. You hold the keys to your own kingdom. It's time to build it.